Catherine Lee Bates spent the summer of 1893 as a visiting professor to Colorado College. She went to the summit of Pikes Peak, where she began writing the poem, America the Beautiful, a work many believe should be our national anthem. It is our national hymn. It is found in every church hymnal published in America. I knew she went to the summit via the old carriage road on the closed south slope. I did not know she reached it via Jones Park, the very place I raised this issue about, that our city council put up for sale in an executive meeting. To remind you, Jones Park is a high meadow above 9,000 feet altitude on Bear Creek, between the Mount Arthur Garfield Cameron's Cone Massif and Almagre Mountain. It was homesteaded in 1873 by prospector Joseph C. Jones, one of Colorado's pioneers, who built a cabin in Jones Park about halfway to the summit of Pikes Peak. There, he proposed to establish a hotel and restaurant for persons climbing the peak. To get there, one traveled on the Pikes Peak Trail up Bear Creek, the first leg of the historic 1873 road to Pikes Peak via Jones Park, to the lake house at Lake Moraine. Jones Park was to be a resort for the thousands of visitors Jones expected. Jones purchased the 160-acre tract for about $200. From whom? Did somebody sell property owned by nobody to Mr. Jones? Did the Indians do it? How did it become property of the city? Why was the property not considered abandoned in the century of surrounding ownership, custody of the National Forest Service? If the city acquired it, wasn't that for a public trust? Why isn't that trust being honored now? Questions for better lawyers. Jones built a cabin. He planted bristlecone pines as windbreaks for planned gardens, made ponds along Bear Creek, and lined trails to other planned cabin sites and a planned opera house with pegmatites studded with smoky quartz crystals and amazonites he found on his hikes. Some accounts portray Jones as an eccentric, somewhat crazy in his later life. He died in 1882, and his cabin burned down, leaving only a chimney. In 1889, the Bear Creek Inn was built around the old Jones chimney. The lodge was owned and operated by Edwin and Edith Giles. Giles became a central figure in the area and constructed many of the cabins and formed the Rosamont Park Company with Colorado College professor Frank Loud for the purpose of development. A railroad was planned to go through Jones Park to Cripple Creek, and when in 1891 gold was discovered in Cripple Creek, surveys for the rail route were done. However, when the proposed short line railroad was built at a lower elevation instead, hopes for Jones Park dwindled. Jones Park was a favorite summer hangout of professors from Colorado College, whose cabins were built there. And it was they who invited Miss Bates to see Pikes Peak. She went up the Pikes Peak Trail, aka the Bear Creek Toll Road, never a road, but a trail, where it intercepted the carriage road from Clyde and went to the summit of Pikes Peak. She spent the night in Jones Park. That wilderness so moved her that when she reached the summit, she was compelled to describe it, and thus began America the Beautiful. If that isn't a reason to keep it intact like it is, preserving the history and remains of the old cabins there, what is. This is America and Americana. Recently, for several years, people were routed away from it by signage because of endangered native greenback cutthroat trout. Before that was an allegation of nesting peregrine falcons on Sentinel Rock. Now, the city is going to sell the property for development. With a threatened endangered fish and nesting peregrine falcons on the premises, proposals to keep the park or donate it to the National Forest Foundation or El Paso County Parks were rejected, and instead the property was put up for sale to the highest bidder. It wasn't just from the summit that Catherine Lee Bates drew her inspiration that became a national treasure. It was the journey, and this was the route, the way up, where she stood, walked, the air she breathed, trees she touched, a trail she walked, in places almost unchanged since then, because the motorbikers only go so far, and the South Slope was closed. The place where America the Beautiful, a national treasure, began. If it was just any wilderness or park, it might be different. But this is the way of America the Beautiful. That should be enough for it to be set aside and protected for the national heritage it is.